You know what? I think nostalgia gets a bad rap. I mean, yeah, things can go south if you're too lost in the sauce and can't take off your rose-tinted glasses, but for me, it is just as exciting to dig through the forgotten nooks and crannies of gaming's past as it is to look forward to the next big thing on the horizon. Don't you think, Yachts?
Oh yeah, because Banjo-Kazooie was officially the moment all human culture peaked, wasn't it? Why don't you go back to the past and see if it holds up as much as you're misremembering?
Huh, what's this thing do? Low-rise jeans, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Feels like 2002 again, which means the perfect time to grab my GameCube by its very useful handle and meander through the world of survival horror. There is no shortage of off-the-beaten-path Resident Evil games that I could highlight for a neat little retrospective. Resident Evil Gaiden was a bizarre attempt to demake and reimagine the series on the Game Boy Color. Resident Evil Survivor was a light gun game that had its light gun compatibility removed at the 25th hour in the US, and then there's Dino Crisis, which isn't technically a Resident Evil game, but it's great, and Capcom won't mention it, so I might as well. But the game we're going to focus on today is 2002's Resident Evil Zero, a gorgeous, underplayed prequel that oscillates between inspired and insipid, and ushered in a generational shift for the series when it passed the baton over to Resi 4. As the 90s came to a close, Capcom's Resident Evil franchise was sitting on top of the gaming world. They'd found themselves with hit after hit on their hands with the original trilogy on PS1, and then Code Veronica on the Dreamcast showed that there was enough zombie-killing love to go around to all the platform holders, including Nintendo. Resident Evil Zero began life on the Nintendo 64. The prequel was set to utilize the strengths of Nintendo's cartridge-based games, which meant no loading times for their core idea of swapping instantly between two characters. Sadly, a troubled production caused the game to get shelved and eventually rebooted on the GameCube. Honestly, the story of pretty much any Resident Evil game ever probably includes the words troubled production at some point. But before Zero comes One. Or something like that, because the franchise's first big splash on the GameCube was Shinji Mikami's fantastic remake of the original Resident Evil in 2002. Its gorgeous visuals, dense atmosphere, and terrifying additions like the Crimson Heads made it truly feel like the definitive version of the original survival horror vision. But while Mikami would move to the troubled production, take a drink of Resident Evil 4, Capcom wanted to keep milking that cash cow before it zombified, and thus Resident Evil Zero returned, although almost entirely remade from the ground up. Set the day before the events of the original Resident Evil in the Arklay Mountains surrounding the Spencer Mansion, Zero centers on the familiar Rebecca Chambers, the medic from RE1, and newcomer Billy Cohen, a convicted war criminal who looks like Timothy Olyphant in Scream 2 and does not own a shirt with sleeves. Fun fact. While the previous Resi games had you locked into your initial choice of Chris or Jill, Leon or Claire, Zero embraces the Panera Bread mantra of you pick two. At almost any point in the game, you can tap a button to instantly inhabit the body of the other character. It's called the zapping system for some reason, even though the on-screen effect looks less like a zap and more like a smear. But I guess smearing system probably didn't focus test all that well. These two survivors have their own unique inventories and puzzles. Rebecca's medical training allows her to mix herbs and certain ingredients for puzzles, and Billy is a big, strong boy that can push heavy objects like a big, strong boy does. These asymmetrical abilities lead to a handful of neat situations where the pair are split up, forcing you to smear back and forth between the two in order to solve a shared puzzle. Finding items with Billy and sending them on a dumbwaiter to Rebecca makes for some great outside-the-box moments of revelation, and I wish these were used far more often throughout the campaign. While the two are together, basic AI commands can be given in the menu, like waste all of our ammo or get bitten without defending yourself. That said, this extra step of constantly opening up the menu to adapt to a given scenario made the system feel a bit cumbersome, leading to a lot of situations where I just told the other character to stay put in a safe room while Papa went out for a pack of green herbs. But if you're not worried about burning through ammo, exploring the world and clearing out rooms back to back with your AI-controlled companion has a great energy to it, and feels kinda like the progenitor of the co-op that would eventually be added into 5 and 6. The other major departure in Resi Zero comes from the series' iconic item boxes, or in this case, the lack thereof. Gone are the connected pocket dimensions where you can store all the little trinkets you pick up along your travels. Instead, Rebecca and Billy can trade items between their two separate inventories, and then whatever you can't carry at a given moment can be tossed on the ground and picked up later on. This led to me going full goblin mode in the main lobby of the mansion until the game eventually sent me a cease and desist letter from dropping any more items in that room. So that's nice. The ingredients of a really neat idea that upends the traditional formula are here, but it felt like they needed a bit more time in the oven. As it stands, you find yourself doing an unhealthy amount of backtracking, especially if you don't drag along the hookshot to each new area. It's this context-sensitive item that is useless 99% of the time until that 1% of situations where it is absolutely necessary to proceed. And it's here that Zero's lack of an item box becomes a real problem. But honestly, all of these complaints just melt away the second I lay eyes on the game itself, because man, oh man, the pre-rendered backgrounds in this and Remake are every bit as brilliant as they were 20 years ago. It's a genuine shame that AAA games have evolved past these, because there's a theater backdrop-like artistry in them that's missing in fully explorable places. Every single room is meticulously laid out, lending to a genuine sense of place throughout the entire game, especially the fantastic train section of the opening act.
Roger, I'll put the brake on now.
Seriously, this is a top 5 train in games next to the Last Express, the spooky train that gets suplexed in Final Fantasy VI. You remember that? Well, the one level in Uncharted 2, that was a neat one. And there's that whole Zelda DS game that no one seems to talk about anymore. So there you go. And while things become more familiar in the back half of Zero, with a mansion that feels similar to the original game, as well as the series' standard sewers and industrial complexes, they're all lovingly pre-rendered, and I just liked existing in them. As for Zero's story, okay, I'm gonna level with you. I replayed this game on stream in its entirety like 45 days ago, and I've forgotten almost everything about its plot other than the major beats. There's this Sephiroth-looking fellow who can control bugs, all the while Albert Wesker and William Birkin are up to no good behind the scenes.
We'll see which one of us is gonna die.
That said, by trying to answer questions nobody really had about the series, Zero introduces a major continuity error as it leads into the original game. The fact that Rebecca is a frightened damsel in RE1 just hours after being a bona fide zombie monkey killing machine in this game is a strange pill to swallow. But given that this is a series where men punch boulders and reattach their severed hands by splashing a bit of peroxide on the wound instead of going to therapy, I guess I can give it a pass. So with all of this, why is it that Resident Evil Zero seems to be one of the more forgotten and underplayed entries in the series? Well, first off, its timing was unfortunate. Releasing on the GameCube 6 months after Eternal Darkness did not help, as that one brought so many new and interesting ideas to the table in comparison. It's also in the shadow of Silent Hill 2 and its residual impact of, oh, so these are the kinds of stories horror games can tell. And Zero did come out later in the same calendar year as Resident Evil 1 Remake, and as beloved as that game was, some franchise fatigue may have started to set in. In a way, Zero felt like the straw that broke the camel's back, putting the franchise on a holding pattern until RE4 came along and completely reinvented the series, as well as AAA gaming as a whole. In that respect, RE0 remains a line of demarcation between the first and second phases of Capcom's M-rated baby. As for what happens next, well, Resi Zero exists in this unique spot in the current state of the franchise. Given the success Capcom has had in remaking 2, 3, and 4, it would make sense that they'd continue that trend. But whether they look back at the original in Zero, to the side at Code Veronica, or forwards to 5 and 6 remains to be seen. Part of me would love to see them take another stab at the dual character setup once again with modern design sensibilities that could really make for something special and unique. Even with all of its blemishes, and there are about as many as you'd find on this guy, Resident Evil Zero remains a charming relic of a very different time in history. I had a blast revisiting the game on modern hardware. It's available on PC and all consoles, and is constantly on sale for a few bucks, which is always appreciated. For fans of survival horror, gorgeous pre-rendered backgrounds, great ideas that feel a tad underbaked, top 5 sickest trains ever, and shirts with a distinct lack of sleeves, Resident Evil Zero is absolutely worth a modern revisit.
Rebecca!
Well, now that I've got a handle on this nice little remote, I might as well make the most of it. I wonder what other nostalgic gems I can revisit if I just tap this button here and...